When the stars abandoned us, we lit our own in the darkness. This is the story of those who were broken, but never bowed. I remember when the stars disappeared. It didn't happen all at once. No cataclysmic flare, no alien invasion blotting out the sky. They simply dimmed, one by one. First Orion vanished, then the Pleiades. Then the entire western band of the Milky Way went dark like someone unplugged half the universe. Astronomers panicked, governments lied, and the rest of us, we watched the heavens fade and wondered what it meant. But I knew, because I was up there when it happened. My name is Commander Avellini Roque, former fleet engineer of the Terran Orbital Navy, and I was stationed aboard the Dauntless, a crippled carrier-turned-refugee ark, drifting in low Jupiter orbit. We weren't just stranded. We were forgotten. Earth had already gone silent 2 years before the stars did. One last transmission, choked with static and screams, before everything ground to a terrifying hush. The colonies fell next. Luna, Mars. Even Titan's echo stations, once the brightest minds of the outer systems, blinked out like dying neurons. So we clung to what was left, each other. The Dauntless held the last of us. A few hundred humans in rusting hulls and patched-together systems, orbiting a gas giant that never cared we were there. We rerouted power from weapon systems to life support, gutted cryo bays for spare oxygenators, and boiled our own waste for hydrogen fuel. We weren't living. We were surviving. That was before the stars betrayed us. The worst part wasn't watching the constellations vanish. It was watching the crew start to believe the darkness was permanent. They stopped naming their children, stopped waking up for shifts. Some just walked out of airlocks, silent, slow, like they were joining the void. But not me, because I knew the truth. They didn't leave us. They didn't disappear. They were stolen. I first caught the signal during a routine diagnostic of our solar panels, a faint burst of gamma that wasn't natural, too structured, too deliberate, a code, repeating every 11.6 minutes. I rerouted our sensors, overclocked the processors, and triangulated the source. It wasn't coming from the Jovian system. It was coming from beyond the black, a place no human had ever returned from. The fracture, it was a myth. A dark scar on the edge of observable space, where every probe sent returned either blind or broken. Rumors said it wasn't just a gravitational anomaly, but a prison, a galactic scar. Some said that's where the architects of the universe locked away the things too dangerous to kill. Now it was calling to us. I brought the data to Captain Reyes. He didn't want to hear it, thought I was chasing ghosts. But the crew had already started whispering about me, about the engineer who hadn't given up, the one who said the stars weren't gone, they were hidden, stolen, that someone or something was hoarding the light for itself. Reyes tried to relieve me of duty, so I relieved him of command. No blood, no mutiny, just the truth on every screen in every corridor. The signal, the trajectory, the proof that something out there still burned. It was enough. We retrofitted the old carrier, stripped its guns, welded cryopods to engine coils. We turned an arc into a spear, one that pointed straight toward the fracture. They thought I was insane, but they followed me anyway, not because they believed the light was still out there, but because they couldn't bear the thought that it wasn't. We launched 7 days later, 147 souls, into the dark, and as the gravity well of Jupiter spat us out into the void, I stood at the viewing deck alone and watched our old sun shrink behind us, one final ember in the rear view of a species with nowhere left to go. We didn't know what we'd find. A prison, a god, a lie. But I made a vow. If the stars would no longer light our way, then by God, we'd light new ones. You don't enter the fracture. You fall into it. The outer edge isn't some brilliant cosmic whirlpool or shimmering rift. It's silence, utter and total. Space is never truly quiet, not if you know how to listen. There's always background radiation, plasma winds, pulsars murmuring across the void. But past a certain point, even that disappears. It felt like flying into a dead heartbeat. We crossed the threshold 11 days out from Jupiter. The signal was stronger now. So strong it began to bleed through our comm systems, distorting speech, fraying transmission logs. Some crews started hearing whispers in the static. Some started answering back. I didn't sleep during that phase. Couldn't. The others needed to see someone stay awake. I spent most nights in engineering, hunched over ancient diagnostic rigs while the ship creaked and groaned around me like it resented being brought here. The Dauntless had always been an ornery thing, half Earth-built, half Martian retrofit. It was never meant to fly this far, never meant to survive alone, but it had my stubbornness coded into its bones, and so did the people aboard it. Lieutenant Varric was one of them, my second in command. He was born on Ceres Station, raised on titanium and recycled air. He used a joke that if you open his veins, he'd bleed ferrofluid. I trusted him more than anyone. So when he knocked on my door, looking like death wrapped in frostbite, I knew it was serious. "They're seeing things," he said quietly, glancing down the hallway. "Deck 4 reports a woman walking outside the ship. No suit, no tether. Hallucinations." I muttered, "That's what I told them." But Deck 2 saw her, too. Same description, same timing. That chilled me. We were nearing the signal's epicenter. Coordinates that didn't make sense in any known spatial geometry. Our star maps failed. Navigation drifted in slow spirals like we were flying through water. Even time felt off. One of the med techs swore a full hour disappeared from his logs. He watched it vanish. "Do you still trust this course?" Varric asked me then, searching my face. "No," I admitted, "but I trust the alternative even less." There was no going back. Not really. The last burn had consumed most of our remaining fuel. We'd bet everything on forward momentum. Still, I needed answers. So I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't. I opened the signal. We'd been intercepting it, decoding pieces passively. I'd avoided playing aloud for fear it might be more than just data. A weapon, a trigger, a lure. But desperation has a way of dulling caution. I locked myself inside the bridge, wired the main speaker array directly into the signal's frequency band, and pressed play. The sound that came through was not language. It was a scream. Not rage. Not pain. Loneliness. It was like hearing the echo of a mind left alone too long, one that had split into a million mirror shards just to keep itself company. Human, but broken in ways we had no words for. And buried in the static, beneath the fragmented soundscape, was a name. Avellini. My name. It said my name. I killed the feed immediately. The crew didn't know. I didn't tell them. Not then. I needed time to think, to understand. But in the silence that followed, something changed. The ship got warmer. Our failing heaters began to hum. Power levels stabilized. Lights stopped flickering. The outer hull, once buckling from pressure discrepancies, returned to equilibrium. It was like the signal had recognized us. Or claimed us. 3 days later, we saw it. Not a station. Not a planet. Not even a structure. Just a light. Hanging in the dark like a star, but pulsing. Beating in sync with our ship systems. Our scanners refused to classify it. It existed in ways physics didn't allow. We drifted toward it on inertia alone, powerless and afraid. And that's when we saw them. Shapes. Dozens. Hundreds. Not ships. Not bodies. Monuments. Floating in formation like a graveyard. Human. Alien. Some thousands of years old. All hollowed out and pointed toward the pulsing light like they were praying. Or warning us. We were too close to turn back. So I gave the order. We pressed forward. And when we reached the epicenter, the light fractured like glass. And behind it, something waited. It wasn't a god. It wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. And in it, I saw Earth. Burning, but not dying. Changing. Becoming something else. And then it spoke again. This time louder. Clearer. Avellini, light it. I didn't understand. Not yet. But I would. Because behind that mirror was the truth. We were not the last humans. We were the first of something new. We should have died the moment we passed through the light. That's what every law of physics said. No shielding, no radiation deflection, no reality anchor, just raw propulsion and a prayer. But we didn't die. We changed. On the other side, it wasn't space as we knew it. No stars, no planets, no vacuum, just a vast glowing field stretching in all directions, like we'd broken into the nervous system of the universe itself. Veins of light pulsed through the void, connecting monoliths of impossible geometry that shifted when you looked too long. They weren't built. They had grown. And at the center of it all hovered the mirror. It wasn't glass. It wasn't even a surface. It was like staring into a memory, so vast it had gravity. Images swirled inside it, not reflected, but remembered. Wars, civilizations, extinctions, humanity's rise from stone to stars. All of it was there, playing back like it was being studied, watched, by something. We couldn't see the observer, but we could feel it, a presence, not malevolent, not benevolent either. Something deeper, ancient, not a being, but a function, a caretaker, and it had noticed us. I stood at the viewport, eyes locked to the mirror's surface as the crew murmured behind me. Varick's voice cut through the quiet. "Commander, you need to see this." He held a data slate in one trembling hand. I took it. Biosigns. Dozens. No, hundreds. Human. Vital signs were weak, but steady. They weren't aboard our ship. They were coming from inside the mirror itself. Survivors? I whispered. Pods, maybe. Cryo-suspended. From Earth, by the look of the DNA. But that wasn't the part that stopped my breath. Each signature was tagged with a name, and I recognized one of them. Elena Roque, my sister, dead 15 years. Killed during the fall of Geneva, when the sky cracked open and the clouds rained fire. Except now she was alive, or something that bore her signature was. "I'm going in," I said. Varick stared at me like I'd said I was going to step inside a black hole. "Commander," I saw her. In the data. Elena. I don't know how, I don't know why. But if this thing has her, has any of them, we owe it to the dead to find out why. No one who goes into the mirror comes out. No one's tried. I corrected. A long silence. Then he nodded. We prepped the shuttle in silence. Stripped down. Minimal systems. Redundant life support. I left command with Varick and a recorded message, just in case. If I didn't return, they were to light the path. Those were my last words before crossing into the mirror. It wasn't entry. It was integration. The moment the shuttle passed through, it was like my body exploded into a million particles and was reassembled by memory alone. I was 10, chasing fireflies on Europa. Then 22, kissing someone I'd forgotten the name of under Titan's auroras. Then standing in a burning field outside Geneva, holding my sister's hand as the bombs fell. I felt her again. Her warmth, her voice, her terror, and then I was whole. Inside, I stepped out onto what looked like a platform made of crystallized time. The sky, if you could call it that, was filled with floating data streams, dreams coded into color. Light moved in slow pulses across the surface, like a heartbeat. And ahead of me stood the child. Human, blonde, pale, no older than 10. She looked up at me with ancient eyes. "Hello, Avellini," she said. My throat dried. "Who are you?" "We are what came before. And what comes next? The ones you call stars. The ones who left you behind." "Why?" I asked. "Because you weren't ready." My fist clenched. "And now?" She smiled. "You lit your own flame." "They were ascendants," she said. "Once biological, now something else. Humanity hadn't been abandoned, they'd been tested. The collapse of Earth wasn't extermination. It was culling, evolution through pressure. And those who survived, we weren't human anymore. We were candidates. For what? She didn't say. only that the others, my sister included, were being held in stasis, waiting for a spark strong enough to free them. I was that spark, but the flame couldn't be lit alone. I had to return, had to show the others, had to bring them to this place, not in body, but in understanding. I had to teach humanity how to light stars again. I awoke back on the Dauntless, gasping, soaked in cold sweat. Days had passed. Varric stood over me. "You were dead," he said, stunned. "No pulse, no brainwave. We were ready to launch your body into the black. But you didn't. Because just before we did, every console on the ship lit up." I sat up. "What did it say?" He showed me. On every screen, every terminal, every display, a single phrase: "Light the path." I didn't speak for 3 days after I came back. Not because I was afraid, because I understood. Something had changed in me during that encounter. Beneath the skin, beneath the memories, I could feel my thoughts moving faster, my senses stretching further. I could hear the hum of the ship's reactor 3 decks down, smell the oxygen imbalance before the life support monitors could. I was still human, but just barely. The crew noticed. They didn't say it out loud, but I saw it in their eyes, in the way they stood straighter when I entered the bridge, in the way they whispered less and listened more. They didn't follow me because I was commander anymore. They followed me because I had come back, and because something had followed me back. The lights aboard the Dauntless now pulsed in a rhythm we couldn't trace to any system. Our outdated sensor rays began picking up data streams centuries beyond our tech. Dead consoles rebooted, broken panels healed. It was like the ship itself was awakening, answering to the presence I carried out of the mirror. I didn't try to control it. I just listened. Then, on the 3rd night, I heard the voice again, only this time it wasn't from the mirror. It came from inside me. The Spark Protocol is now active. That's what it called it, the Spark Protocol. An ancient ignition sequence, encoded into the bones of reality. A process not of war or conquest, but of resurrection. And it had chosen me to light it. Varric was the first I told. I showed him the schematics burned into my retina, images I hadn't drawn but remembered, like muscle memory from a life I hadn't lived. They weren't plans for a weapon. They were instructions for a forge. "A forge for what?" he asked. "A star," I replied. "We called it Torch Point 1. It started in the engine room. The mirror had rewritten the core structure, Retas plasma conduits into latticework for energy modulation, converted dark matter residue into crystalline amplifiers. We didn't build it. We simply followed instructions. The forge was small, about the size of a reactor core. But when activated, it would ignite a chain reaction across spatial nodes, turning raw vacuum into light, true light. Not fusion, not fission. Creation. At first, the crew resisted. Not openly, but I saw the fear, the doubt, until Deck Officer Singh, quiet, skeptical Singh, walked into the forge chamber alone. He whispered something, then collapsed. When he woke, he was changed too. He saw the same diagrams, spoke the same phrases. We weren't spreading a technology. We were spreading a spark. By day 15, half the crew had heard the voice. By day 22, all of them had. And they weren't just followers now. They were conductors. We launched the first ignition 30 kilometers off the ship's bow. A test run. I stood on the bridge as we counted down. 10, 9. The forge began to hum, vibrating deep in our bones. 8, 7. The stars were still gone. 6, 5. The mirror pulsed once, just once. 4, 3. Then silence. 2, 1. Ignition. The void caught fire, not with flame, but with reality. Where nothing had existed, now there was light. A star, not yellow like Sol, but deep blue, its surface rippling with geometric patterns, like it understood it was being watched. The crew stood frozen. Then one by one, they wept. We hadn't just made a light. We created a new star system, a beacon, a beginning. Torch Point 1 became a sanctuary, a navigational anchor in the chaos. The ship systems normalized. Our long-range comms picked up distant echoes, other survivors. Human, drifting, waiting. They weren't gone. They'd just been scattered, like seeds. Within a week, we had decoded the coordinates embedded in the Forge's second schematic. Torch Point 2, this one farther. Riskier. The route led through dark sectors, places the old Earth maps marked as inhospitable, gravitationally unstable, or worst of all, forgotten. But we went anyway. The Dauntless wasn't a carrier anymore. It was a flame bringer, a lighthouse. We had become the new Dawn Armada. And as we sailed deeper into the black, I broadcast one simple message across all bands, all languages, all channels. To the lost, to the broken, to those who believe the stars forgot your name. Hold fast. We are lighting the path. You are not alone. But lighting new stars had consequences, because we weren't the only ones watching. On the outskirts of Torch Point 2, just before ignition, our sensors picked up a distortion, not gravitational, biological, something vast, something moving to the dark like it owned it, something older than the mirror. It didn't respond to hails. It didn't show up on infrared. But when we ran its movement signature through the ancient Martian DeepNet logs, we found one match. Designation, Star Eater, and it was coming for us. We lit Torch Point 2, but we didn't celebrate. Not this time. Because something watched us as we did it. Not a signal, not a transmission. A presence. It hovered just past the event horizon of ignition. Massive, coiled like a wound galaxy. A shape you could only see from the corner of your eye. Like the void itself had curled inward to examine us. I couldn't breathe when I first felt it. My body forgot how. It wasn't terror. Not exactly. It was recognition. The same way prey recognizes a predator it evolved to fear. The ship's internal AI, an outdated, half-failing thing we called scraps, went catatonic for 7 minutes. When it came back online, its voice was changed. Panicked. Signal contamination detected. Designate threat, Leviathan class. Antiliminal entity. Alias, Star Eater. I stared at the sensor map. There was no shape, no clear edge or mass. Only a shadow, growing. We pulled back from Torch Point 2, hoping the Forge hadn't drawn its full attention. It didn't work. That night, 3 crew members vanished. Not killed, not spaced. Just gone. No ruptured hatches. No logs. No DNA traces. They were there during the evening shift rotation. By morning, erased. Even Varric looked shaken. "It's feeding," he whispered. "Not on flesh. Not on matter. On presence. On being. Whatever the Star Eater was. It didn't destroy in a traditional sense. It unmade. It devoured meaning. Memory. Proof. The more we try to look at it, define it, the more we risk drawing it closer. But we'd lit the stars. That meant it had noticed us. And I had one impossible thought. Maybe that was the point. I went back to the mirror. Alone. I didn't ask the crew. Didn't file a mission log. I took a single shuttle, crossed into the glowing divide, and called for the child. She appeared in moments, standing atop a fractal tower of light. "Avellini," she said, "you have come farther than expected." "You knew this would happen," I said. Not a question. She didn't deny it. "You lit the dark," she said gently. "And what feeds in darkness cannot ignore flame. Then help us stop it." She tilted her head. "I cannot." I stepped closer. "Why?" "Because the Star Eater is not your enemy." She let the silence hang before finishing. "It is your mirror." I thought she meant metaphorically. I was wrong. Back aboard the Dauntless, I reviewed what little data we had on the Star Eater signal, buried in the entropy patterns. Sequences so deep they bordered on metaphysical. I found something familiar. Our own ship's ignition code. Distorted. Inverted. The Star Eater wasn't just responding to our signal. It was broadcasting it back. Twisted. Corrupted. As if it was learning from us. Mimicking. Adapting. That's when I realized the Forge didn't just create light. It created balance. Every flame must cast a shadow. The moment we lit new stars, we also lit something ancient, something that had been waiting in the folds of space for another flare to burn, not to stop us, but to become us, to replace us. "Commander," Varric said one evening, voice low, "how do we fight a thing that isn't real the way we understand reality?" I answered without thinking, "We don't." He blinked. "Then what do? We outshine it." That's when we enacted the Constellation Gambit. It was madness. Strategic, calculated madness. If the Forge could burst stars, then we wouldn't light just one. We'd light 7, simultaneously, across dead sectors, forgotten colonies, broken war fronts where the last embers of humanity once flickered. We would burn a network into the void, an array of torch points connected by radiant memory, each one designed to resist the entropy signature of the Star Eater, not with force, with identity. We had no superweapons, no armadas, just our story, our stubbornness, our refusal to be erased. The Forge was no longer a tool. It was a statement. Deploying it would require splitting the crew into 7 squadrons, each tasked with lighting a star, each facing the possibility of never returning. I offered every crew member the chance to opt out. Not one did. Even Singh, who once feared even talking to the mirror, volunteered to lead Torchpoint 5. "You gave us something to believe in," he said. "No," I told him. "You lit the first spark. I just carried it." We launched at midnight. Each squad, each shuttle, a flickering ember slicing through dark. And as I stood alone on the bridge, watching the sensor logs blink online one by one, Torchpoint 1, ignited. Torchpoint 2, ignited. Torchpoint 3, stable ignition. Torchpoint 4, 5, 6. I held my breath. Then the final message came. Torchpoint 7, online. 7 stars. 7 beacons. Each one singing with memory, light, and presence. A constellation built not by gods, but by ghosts who refuse to fade. And in their glow, the shadow began to recoil. The Star Eater flinched, not from pain, from recognition, from the realization that the meal it had come to consume had become fire. They called it the Lightfall event. 7 new stars born in sequence, forming the first human-made constellation, the Crucible Line. It cut through the void like a scar of hope, not on any chart, not on any pre-existing map, but every surviving ship, every broken remnant drifting to the black, saw it. And for the first time in decades, they came back online. Distress calls we hadn't heard in years screamed to life across every open frequency. Morse analog burst quantum, some from derelicts thought long loss of entropy. We weren't alone. We'd never been. They were just waiting for someone to light the way. The Crucible Line wasn't just a beacon. It was a memory net. Every torch point, every forge, carried not just flame, but data. Encoded within the stars themselves was the history of humanity. Earth's last days, our scattered remnants, the truth about the mirror, the threat of the Star Eater. But also, us, the story of the Dauntless, of a ship that refused to die, of a crew that lit new suns because the old one forgot their names. We became signal. We became story. And in that story, others found their way. Refugees began arriving within 2 weeks. Junk haulers from Europa's corpse, still dragging frozen stasis crates. A mining barge from Saturn's inner rings, its hull scarred but functional. A station pod from Alpha Centauri, running on backup light drives, carrying 53 emaciated survivors and a violin that had never stopped playing. They called us the Flame Wardens. It wasn't a title we gave ourselves. It was one we earned. But the light came at a price. The Star Eater wasn't gone. It had retreated, yes, but not defeated. It hovered now beyond the crucible's edge, pacing the new stars like a wolf circling firelight. It didn't attack. Not yet. It simply waited. The Mirror Child warned us. The longer you burn, the more it learns. It cannot be stopped by force, only by choice. Whose choice? I asked. She stared at me, eyes deeper than any star. Yours. I began to see it in dreams after that. Not the Star Eater. My sister, Elena. She stood in fields of ash, untouched by flame, staring into the darkness beyond the crucible line. Her mouth never moved, but I heard her voice in my bones. You're close. To what? To remembering. That's when I understood the final phase of the Spark Protocol. The stars were not the end. They were keys. Every one we lit unlocked a portion of something far older, buried not in space, but in the human mind. DNA wasn't just biology. It was storage. And the mirror? It had been downloading us all along. Every time we looked into it, every time we dared remember, what we mistook for light was a map to something deeper. Buried, waiting, Earth, not the broken planet we left behind, but the real one, the one we had forgotten. You see, the fall hadn't been a total extinction. It was a veil, a cloaking field over the one world the Star Eater could never reach, because it was never built on light. It was built on memory. Somewhere out there, Earth still burned, not with flame, with purpose. The mirror had shown it to me once, a glimpse, a golden sphere surrounded by impossible orbitals, shrouded in distortion. I'd assumed it was metaphor. It wasn't. It was real. And the Spark Protocol was designed to find the coordinates encoded in our blood, one generation at a time. We weren't just survivors. We were seed keys. And I was the final one, the last to remember, the last piece. When I accepted it, something inside me unlocked. My veins ignited. My thoughts expanded. I could see every torch point simultaneously, feel every survivor, hear the forge sing in harmonic resonance with the newborn stars. I wasn't human anymore. Not exactly. I was what humanity had been becoming. Not evolution by mutation. Evolution by memory. The Mirror Child appeared one last time. No longer a girl, but a being of light and rhythm, woven from a million ancestral echoes. Avellini Roque, she said, "Do you understand now?" "Yes." "You remember?" "I do." "Then speak the last coordinates." I opened my mouth, and what came out was song. The Dauntless trembled. The crucible line pulsed brighter, harmonizing into a superstructure of frequency and graviton flux. Our 7 stars began rotating around an invisible core, each orbit dragging space-time itself into a spiral. A new gate was forming. Not built, born. The forge wasn't just for stars. It was for pathways. And this one didn't lead forward. It led home. We called it the Ark Door. Beyond it, if the calculations were right, was Earth, the real Earth, the one we had left behind to become something else. And we were ready. But so was the Star Eater. It made its move. We called them false stars. The ones we lit ourselves. Not born of nuclear fusion, but ignited in retaliation. Stars that didn't nourish life, but consumed it. Artificial novas flaring from orbital batteries, energy lattice cores, and entropy bombs detonated in the cradles of ancient alien empires. I watched the last one die just hours ago from the deck of Vigilant Memory, drifting above the ruins of the Eichel Singularity. A dark sector, now. No light, no screams, not even calm traffic. Silence has a texture in deep space. It feels like guilt and victory braided together. And now comes the harder part. I'm on Earth, or what's left of it. The Terran Restoration Council called me back. summoned every surviving commander. The war was officially over. The scorched armistice inked in what passed for ink among post-organic species. We were victorious. Humanity had, against impossible odds, outlasted every interstellar power that once sought to erase us. But victory isn't peace. Victory is just the last breath of a broken engine before it shuts down. As I stepped the halls of New Geneva, the rebuilt capital nestled in Earth's only breathable valley, I saw children who didn't know what stars looked like, just screens, flares, and the weaponized afterimages of what once was sky. They called me the Ember Admiral, now. Half myth, half warning. I hated the name. A girl with a synthetic arm offered me flowers carved from recycled circuit boards. You gave us a future, she said. I didn't have the heart to tell her what we lost to get it. The council chamber was quiet. 12 seats, 10 filled. Survivors of the Deep Rift campaign, the Martian reprisals, the Silent Moon siege, leaders with more prosthetics than flesh. One AI avatar flickered in a synthetic chair, its voice borrowed from an old Earth opera. Counselor Draven leaned in. His voice was cracked glass. The stars are gone, Admiral. We killed them. What now? I answered without hesitation. We build new ones. They laughed, some bitter, some hopeful. But I meant it. Not just stars in the literal sense. Though, yes, we had the technology to reignite stellar nurseries with quantum fusion seeds. But stars as symbols, as direction, as light. Humanity couldn't survive on vengeance. We needed vision. Project Dawn was born that night. Distributed Aegis World Network. Artificial suns, terraformed orbitals, and cultural seeding hubs to restore wonder across the galaxy. It wasn't about reclaiming what we lost. It was about becoming something new. I oversaw the first ignition in the ruins of the quarry belt. It took 12,000 drones, a planetary AI scaffold, and the cooperation of over 70 rebuilt human enclaves. But when it flared to life, a miniature sun cradled by engineered moons, I cried like I hadn't since the first fall of Earth. We named the star Phoenix 1. But not everyone was ready for peace. The Ash Concordance, a coalition of post-human radicals, believed we should remain hidden, that reigniting stars would draw attention, invite more conflict, that our pain was our only protection. They launched an attack on Phoenix 1. Suicide ships, viral AIs, even turned one of our terraformers into a collapsing black hole seed. They failed. Barely. But they left a message scorched into the nova flare. Burn stars lead home. You would light the galaxy again, then prepare to defend it forever. And we will, because that's what humanity does. We endure. We evolve. We ignite. As I dictate this final entry, I stand aboard Dawn's Promise, the first of our stellar arcs. Inside are 20,000 settlers, scientists, poets, children, even descendants of those who once tried to annihilate us, now choosing to walk among us. This time, we're not lighting stars as weapons. We're lighting them as beacons, a chain of light stretching across the black, each one saying, "We are here, we are human, and we will never vanish quietly again." They called us extinct. They called us ghosts. But the truth is simple. The stars abandoned us. So we lit new ones, and in their glow, we're finally alive again.